Hello, good afternoon. At least it's afternoon here. Um, and welcome to Mahamudra for the People. I believe actually, maybe it's session 35. I'm sorry, 31. I don't know. I never really know what's going on. Um, yeah, and so welcome for those who are new. Welcome for those who have been, steadily attending. Welcome. Uh, so this offering is kind of like a class, I guess you could say, or something series of teachings on Mahamudra, and it has been varying to some extent between the engaging some of the Indian source texts, for example, by Tilopa, Naropa, um, Kana, Varupa, and others. And last week I was teaching a bit from the Pointing Out the Dharmakaya by Ninth Karmapa Wangchuk Dorje. And I'm going to continue along with this, briefly today. And I can see there's already one question, this one from Shane. And so thank you for the question, and please feel free to post questions in the ask a question section or in the chat box. But before we begin, I'd like us to do a little bit of meditation, probably somewhere around 12 minutes, possibly 14 minutes, and allow yourself to settle in to the space where you are. Allow your body to relax. And importantly, allow your mind to relax. And feel free to use whatever technique you've been using. In brief, there are a number of techniques. Most classically, reliance on the breath, so awareness of every inhalation and exhalation, or reliance on an actual object in your visual field, or a visualized object, or mind itself as it arises. So whatever technique feels best to you, feel free to use that. And we'll sit for about 13 or 14 minutes. Allow your mind to be free of the past, free from preoccupation with the future, free of this particular moment. Allow yourself to put down any need to analyze or figure out what this is. And most importantly, try and allow yourself to rest freely, openly, and intently. So back to this group. It's nice to see everybody. Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. So Shane asks a question. At our last meeting, you were going to speak about Vajrayana perspective of shamatha and vipassana, but didn't get to it. Can I speak to that today? Absolutely. I can get to shamatha, definitely. Vipassana, let's see, possibly today. Or maybe I can address some of Vipassana in a, I don't know if we'll get to that necessarily today, but definitely next week. I can't remember if we're meeting next week, but we will get to it. I think that the first thing I want to check in about, though, is that the way this text is structured is it kind of goes through the outer preliminaries and then the inner preliminaries, and I do remember there was some interest in a brief description of the uncommon preliminaries, being, the Nundro practices. So if anybody wants to express an opinion in the text box, that'll help, guide me a little bit. Perhaps everyone got enlightened from that session. Okay, so and also just for everyone's awareness, at some point, possibly in January, but if not January, perhaps February, there will be beginning a series of weekend Mahamudra retreats, and so the details of this need to be worked out, but theoretically starting on Friday evening, and then teaching and practice session on both weekend days with the closing Tsok or Gana Chakra. And right now I'm thinking of offering 4 of these a year, and then 4 other weekend retreats on different things. So perhaps we could do a Nundro retreat, weekend retreat, and then also possibly a Guru Yoga or something like that. Yes. I have some little creatures here. Here, take this, and then close the door behind you. Okay. Okay, can you close the door? All right. Okay. All right. My little ones. Okay. Yeah, 4 retreats, 4 practices, or maybe, other things. 4 session Guru Yoga, 444. Can I raise my, this is about as loud as I can be. How is that? Is that better? Is that, okay, if somebody could just confirm whether or not they can hear me. Yes. Does anybody hear me? Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, I can't move. Yeah, I can't get close to the computer because I've got a text in front of me. Uh, so, um, in any event, oh, okay. Okay. So, in any event, um, I will start with a little bit of teaching on the mantra practices. Sorry for all the activity in here. Um, so, anyway, so the four uncommon preliminaries consist of the practice of prostrations and taking refuge, the practice of Vajrasattva, and the um, practice of mandala offerings and the practice of Guru Yoga. And so, in essence, the practice of prostrations and refuge exist as a way for us to directly engage the lineage through a visualized refuge tree. So we visualize that there's a large tree in front of us, and this tree has a number of branches. Kind of the central trunk of the tree has typically, in the Kagyu tradition, there'll be Vajradhara, Dorjichang, basically kind of the Kagyu version of a primordial Buddha directly in the center. And, even though he's, it's kind of all gets all weird, right? Because, at the essence of Vajradhara is the essence of all Buddhas. And so, he's not really gendered, right? And so this kind of anthropomorphization for, the conglomeration of all Buddhas happens to be, a male, female, in union, sometimes not in union, and it's just this blue Buddha with, in the Matangi Mudra holding a bell and a Vajra. Surrounded typically by all of the Kagyu gurus, so the Karmapas, various Sutta Rinpoches, the few Janga Rinpoches, few Shama Rinpoches, few Gyaltsen Rinpoches, Tilopa, Naropa, Saraha, and then behind them is the collection of all the dharmas. Below are all of the dharma protector, the yidams first. So the yidams primarily being Vajravarahi, Chakrasamvara, all the ones we find in the Kagyu Natso, Mahamaya, Gyawa Gyamso, form of red Chinrezi with consort. Aryatara is there. In addition to others. And then below that are the Dharma protectors, and then there's the Assembly of Bodhisattvas and the ordained Sangha in the form of bhikshus, bhikshunis, and Buddhas, etc. And one recites what is basically, first one does a refuge prayer, and then also takes a bodhisattva vow. And the refuge prayer is accompanied by full body prostrations. Someone does full body prostrations, and the refuge prayer, which is basically saying that one is taking refuge in this entire expanse of the lineage, right? So there are the gurus, there are the yidams, there are the protectors, there's the Sangha itself, there's the Dharma itself. And as you prostrate, you end up also prostrating with loved ones on one side of you and enemies on the other. And so you're kind of bringing all beings into direct relationship with the lineage. And of course, the tree itself, the whole thing is this kind of visual fabrication of what lineage is, right? So we can look at lineage in a more energetic, kind of inspirational way, and when we do that, then the lineage becomes that which sparks, the heart of our practice, right? So um, we not we may not be able to visualize, all of the karmapas, or um, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Gampopa, Richungpa, all of these. But it's to understand that from Vajradhara all the way down to our teacher, and then to direct presence, in our lives, all the the blessings of the guru, lineage is within us, right? And the blessings of all the yidams, right? And there may be some yidams we end up connecting with in this life. There might be, one or two, or you know, but basically the blessings in the cities that are offered as a result of practicing, different yidam practices are available directly to us in this moment. Um, all the dharmas of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the noble Sangha, and all the pechas, the dharma texts, those are available to us at all times as well. Um, and so that ends up meaning that we have direct experience of all of these as a potential. And of course, the Dharma protectors who remove obstacles, are included in this as well. And so one does this practice, both the refuge prayer and the prostrations, 100,111 times. And so this is the way of, it's described as taking refuge and arousing bodhicitta. And the bodhicitta part is then, of course, the generation of the intent to liberate all sentient beings and perform the activities of a bodhisattva. And so one does this as much as one can, and eventually towards the end of the practice, the whole refuge tree melts into light and becomes essentially unified with our being. Right? And so the point of this, it can feel very strange and perhaps a little intense at times to have this kind of represented as a tree, and it's a little bit ornate and elaborate, but the whole point, when everything is going well, the visualization is relaxed and free, the refuge prayer is relaxed and free, then we really kind of click into this kind of unified experience of the lineage not being some kind of abstract thing that existed a long time ago, that it actually is as real as the air that we breathe and the blood that courses through our circulatory system. It's as real as the temperature of our skin. It's as innate as the blinking of our eyes. It's not. It's not a big deal. It becomes innate. So yeah, it is a lot of prostrations. When I did it in retreat in India, and I was much younger. So my teacher, who I did prostrations in his retreat cabin in Sikkim on the border of Bhutan. We ended up. He had us start off at about 1,100 prostrations, the first day, and it took about a month and a half or so to do the whole set of prostrations. But we were practicing from 2:30 in the morning till about 6 at night, with some breaks in between. But it was pretty rigorous. Um, Now Payne asks, we ended up actually getting it times to 3,000 a day. I wore away the hair like right here. I was nothing but skin and bones, and you know all that all that weird stuff. Um, Payne writes, no knee pads where I was doing it. No knee pads, no hand pads. I bruised my ribs. And all the floorboards were uneven. I have a picture somewhere, not on my computer, of the hut where we were, but it was kind of this like hut cabin thing with barely any electricity, and the Rinpoche who was kind of presiding over everything had set up a buzzer, so he would ring the buzzer at 2:30, and there's no toilet. We had to go to the side of the hill, and there was no plumbing of any kind. There was a pipe that came out of a stream, and so it was, mountain stream water that we would bathe in. It was beautiful, amazing, nighttime skies, but no panes of glass in the windows, so everything would get damp, and it was during monsoon. So yeah, it was definitely. I don't know if I could handle that now that I'm old. Um, uh, so Payne asks if I could speak about the Yutuk Nintik Nundro and how it's supposed to be specifically livable by lay people. Um, yeah. So, each Dharma system tends to have its own Nundro. So, this what I'm describing here is the Karma Kagyu Nundro, which is directly connected to very kind of generally the practice of Mahamudra, but there are Nundro systems for the Drukpa Kagyu, for the Drikung Kagyu, for the various Nyingma traditions, for the Gelug tradition and Sakya tradition, and there is a little bit of variability between all of them. But on average, they serve similar purposes with respect to generating a sense of closeness and intimacy with not only the lineage but the blessings of the teacher, etc. Um, and um, uh, Okay, I'm sorry. I just need to pause. Okay, I'm sorry. So there are systems like the Yutok Nintik, which is the a Nyingma Terma tradition that kind of has. If I'm going to speak very like kind of broadly and briefly about it, a Ati Yoga component that includes so Dzogchen and six yogas. It's not typically six yogas in Naropa because it's all separate. Um, there are Yidam practices and other things, um, and then also an entire system of medical practice. And this was um, revealed by Yutukpa, the elder, um, who was just a few generations, I believe, removed from Guru Rinpoche's time or Padmasambhava's time. Um, and there's a Nundro system associated with that, which is actually only takes 7 days to do, but you can do it many times. I've done the 7 day version once, right before I started working for New York City Department of Correction. I did a little retreat on that, and it's a very nice nundro, very similar, essentially, uh, and a very kind of intuitive kind of system of practice. Um, Lorena asks, is this something you do forever once you have the practice, or is this a practice for just retreat time? I think Shambhalians do it as a regular practice once they get to that practice. Well, so, this depends a little bit, within the context of the way things are structured. This is a kind of foundational practice. It's definitely not meant to be practiced and then never touched again. Um, if one, once one completes this, kind of very traditionally, then one opens up to the possibility to be able to engage in Mahamudra practice or, Yidam practice. And so, for example, I did the prostrations part of Nundro in Sikkim, in retreat with Patung Rinpoche, and then Patung Rinpoche and Ani Zangmo, my root teacher, and all of us went down to Bodh Gaya together to meet with Bokar Rinpoche, and we met with Bokar Rinpoche, and that's the first time I received Mahamudra instructions from Bokar Rinpoche, and then from immediately after that started Vajrasattva, the next Nundro practice in Bodh Gaya. And during that time, my root teacher died, and then I followed Bokar Rinpoche up to his monastery in Darjeeling, outside of Darjeeling in Mirik, and I completed the rest of the Nundro under his guidance there, in retreat. And so the Vajrasattva took a little bit, around a month. The Mandala offerings took about a month, and the Guru Yoga took about another month. And there's a little bit of travel, in between. The practice of Vajrasattva is, described here as a meditation and recitation of practice of Vajrasattva, which purifies evil deeds and obscurations. And so this practice involves, there are a couple of different ways, or two different main forms of Vajrasattva. There's Vajrasattva with consort or not with consort. And so you visualize Vajrasattva right above your head. So Vajrasattva is white, has two hands. In his right hand, he holds a Vajra at the level of his heart. In the left hand, he holds a Ganta or a bell, kind of gently draped on his lap. And basically, he represents the liberated mind, the kind of Vajra essence of mind free from obscuration. Right? And so one visualizes him directly above one's head and recites the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva. And in doing so, there's a kind of stream of nectar that comes down and removes all impediments to realization. It's a great purification practice, and as this nectar kind of moves throughout the body, you visualize that all of the kind of negativity that we may have amassed over time ends up completely melting away. It's quite a beautiful practice, and it's very different, right? Prostrations are very active, and then Vajrasattva is, just basically sitting, and it's a very good introduction to a seated, deity practice. I have one friend who that this is his main practice, and he's been going back and forth between the UK and India since the late '60s, and he received kind of teachings on this in the '60s, and this has been his main practice all this time. Um, so this is another example of people just sticking with the basics, and we do have this kind of terrible American kind of need to think that the next thing, that which is more complex or esoteric, is more profound, and that's actually kind of incorrect. And so just the practice of Vajrasattva, is powerful, and even just saying just Vajrasattva is it's a symbol of how terrible I am. Um, the the same goes for prostrations. My teacher Putting Rinpoche told me that he knew somebody who did prostrations the full 100,000 40 times, and that was their main practice. And so, it's very easy to think that, maybe, once I do Nunjo, then I'll have access to, all the real kind of meaty or juicy Dharma stuff. And, it's kind of a strange way of thinking about it, and, a little convoluted. So the third practice of these uncommon preliminaries is a practice of mandala offerings. And so in doing this practice, there are basically two sets of mandalas. There's a mandala plate that one keeps in one's shrine, which represents basically the kind of field of merit, everything that one is offering. And then one holds a small mandala plate and offers, basically it's visualized, many different precious substances and objects to the field of merit, right? And so, and one makes this offering. There's 7 piles. The one does this 100,000 times. You can keep some cloth in your lap to catch everything. You can use rice and barley, not cooked, raw rice and barley, and little precious stones, and all sorts of things. And each one symbolizes, like back in the day, when people would receive instructions in India, they would offer like a mandala of gold dust, to their teacher. And so, this is making an offering to the lineage, to the Buddhas about 3 times in 10 directions, all the bodhisattvas, as a way of generating merit. And so how do you count? So it depends. With all the practices, they're a little different. I don't have my mala here, but there are mala counters for counting, various kinds of mantra recitations. With prostrations, you can prostrate and move a pebble over, come back up, prostrate, move a pebble over. Some people use those museum counters that security guards have, where they click, click. And then with the mandala offerings, you can actually hold the mandala plate and the mala, in your hand, and you move, you tell a bead as you do all 7. Do the 7, tell a bead, do a 7, tell a bead, do a 7, tell a bead, like that. And then Guru Yoga ends up being it's a very beautiful, profound practice. I gave some instruction to somebody on this recently, I was just struck how beautiful it is, and so it starts off with visualizing this field of refuge and directly in front, and so this is all of the different lamas or gurus of the in this particular case the Kagyu tradition. Um, and you can visualize yourself as a yidam. On top of your head is the root guru. Um, and then one makes prayers and supplications to all of the masters of the Mahamudra lineage. And so from, the Buddha, there's quite early ones. So there's Nagarjuna, there's Shavaripa, there's Saraha, Shavaripa, Maitrepa, all the way down to, through the whole, golden Kagyu rosary to, contemporary times and to us. And then one recites the Dorje Chong Tungma, which is the prayer in the beginning of the Chöp sadhana that we do with Bhumi Sparsha. And then there are a variety of shorter kind of supplicative prayers that one does. And then there's one in particular where you're asking, the guru to bless you, right? And so this is really, again, ultimately devotional in nature, right? What we are doing is we're asking for the blessings. Like, please let these blessings down. Let my practice be deep. Let Mahamudra arise in a way that's natural and free and open, and addresses all things. Maybe my mind to be recognized as something that's pure and beyond form and beyond limitation. And you just allow yourself to receive, and at the same time to look at the way that we how this practice allows us to dissolve any kind of separation between ourselves and our teachers. Right? So it ends up becoming a very important practice with respect to Mahamudra because, as I said probably about 3 sessions ago, in talking about devotion, that devotion is considered, one of the main ways through which Mahamudra realization is passed on. And it's not necessarily, at all devotion, here I'm giving you gold, give me the blessings. But really that sense of intimacy, and I've talked a lot about how appearance, is the Lama. And, this is something that Bok Rinpoche so beautifully and powerfully made a point to teach that everything, right, our obscurations, the ways that we kind of hit a wall in our practice, that's the teacher. Our emotions as they rise, kind of, puffed up, those that are a teacher that allow us to be able to experience emotion directly. The ability to rest our mind freely is a teacher. The daily aches and pains of our body, as reminders of impermanence, are a teacher. Every possible thing, becomes our teacher. And so the practice on this, in this level, becomes a way of kind of opening up experience completely, so that everything, not only is everything Mahamudra, but everything is also the blessing of the teacher. So Jarrett writes, I'm doing Haruka Vajrasattva practice, and I'm wondering about some technical things. I have a hard time holding the visualization of deity as I'm trying to visualize the Amrita flowing through the body. Do you have any tips, or does it not matter too much, or it'll mature as you keep going? Yeah, it definitely matures. I don't know how long you've been doing the practice, but like all practices, frustrations can be incredibly clunky when we start off. Every practice is basically that it's helpful to remember that we should allow for there to be time to adjust, right, and transition into practice. But you know, ultimately, the more time we put into it, and the more we're able to kind of hold our practice both firmly and in a relaxed way together, right? Firmly in the sense of, I appreciate doing this because this is meaningful to me, and it ultimately leads to my own freedom from suffering, is one piece, and then the more that we show up and do it in a way where we're not torturing ourselves, or we're letting everything just happen freely, in a way that's relaxed, ends up uh, um, allowing things to unfold, naturally. Um, and so those were the uncommon preliminaries, and of course, should we get into a Ninja retreat, I'll definitely go into this in greater depth and give the transmission for the practice and all of that. Um, but I do feel like it plants good seeds. Some people, have a mixed relationship to Nindro. Some people have a mixed relationship to prostrating to, visualized teacher, or let alone a real teacher. All of these things can be a little complex sometimes, in the Western, at least American idiom. And though sometimes it takes a little bit of time to address that in a way that's skillful. Now, in this text, though, so there's the general preliminaries, the common, uncommon, and then there's the superior preliminaries. And the superior preliminaries are quite brief, but the first is to they comprise of the basically the four conditions of practice. So the first is impermanence, and in the text it says impermanence arouses one's being, and one sees specific and general characteristics of the dharmas of samsara which lead to renunciation and revulsion. One thoroughly abandons worldly activities. That is the causal condition. Right? And so this causal condition, it's not that we have to feel like everything, around us is, terrible. But it kind of goes back to what I was talking about last week about unreliable sources of refuge, right? Some things are feel like decent, places of refuge, and they're actually unreliable because they're samsaric, right? They change. They don't necessarily generate wisdom. And then the next one is being accepted by a true spiritual friend. So a person, the lineage guru, the guru in the form of the words of the Sujata, the absolute, the Dharmata guru, or appearances, the symbolic guru, and so on, is the empowering condition. Therefore, attend to such a guru, right? And so this is what I was talking about before, that all appearance is the teacher. And so the next thing that we need as a superior preliminary is the ability to rely on a teacher, to rely on the lineage teachings, of which this one is, to rely on the experiences that arise within the context of our practice, and that's a powerful teacher because it's directly connected to your own experience, and the nature of appearance itself as the teacher. Right? And so sometimes we can feel I've definitely felt this because all of my kind of main direct teachers happen to be in India, and a number of them have died. So it's easy to feel initially to feel far away from them under those circumstances, right? And so then one of the benefits of Mahamudra practice is that it opens that whole experience up, allowing us to connect to teachers who have passed away, to teachers who are far away. In the past several days, I've had experiences where I feel very close to my present main teacher Gyaltsen Rinpoche, um, just in being, and so it's helpful to remember that these ideas of distance and these ideas of time really are relatively arbitrary. I know that can sound a little abstract and weird, but over time it begins to make sense. Over time when we begin to become more familiarized with some of the qualities of mind, then we begin to, entertain the possibility of the fact that there's actually no such thing as separation between oneself and one's teacher. And then Ninth Karmapa goes on to say that here all aspects of bias in regard to philosophical systems that examine the conventional conceptuality have been completely cut. They're all non-contradictory. More exalted than all is the primordial way things are, what is known as the natural state of dharmata. Arouse certainty in that, because that unconfused object of meditation is the object condition. Develop certainty in it. So this is where one puts the books down. Philosophy is great. It's wonderful. It's compassionate in the sense that it makes things clear. I work with a lot of people who have law degrees and are lawyers in one capacity or another, and the benefit of spending time with people like that is their communication is exceptionally clear, right? And being in sometimes I'll be in a meeting with 4 or 5 lawyers, and I'm the Vajrayana chaplain, and all of a sudden I can be reminded of how wonderful clarity can be, right? Deliberative clarity. And philosophy very much is that way. And yet at the same time, Karmapa points out that more exalted than all of this, philosophy is the primordial way that things are, that is known as the natural state of dharmata. And so learning how to rest directly in that. So rather than read about it, familiarize yourself with it in practice. Right? So, again, with respect to Mahamudra, and there have been some great books published recently. One of them, Mind Saying Mind. It's the Geluk, approach to Mahamudra. There's Thakpa Tashi Namgyal's Moonbeams of Mahamudra. There's Ninth Karmapa's very long text on Mahamudra. I think it's been translated twice as of late. A lot of gems from the Drukpa Kagyu Mahamudra tradition have been translated, and of course, actually, it's going to be released later this month. A translation of some of the Indian source texts, will be released. I can't remember the publisher, but all that stuff is great, and yet that doesn't eliminate suffering. Right? What eliminates suffering is our ability to be able to develop relationship to the natural state of Dharmakta by experiencing it. And so that becomes one of the superior preliminaries. And then the next one is through being free from attachment to meditation, one gives rise only to thorough perseverance and is free from signs of hope and fear, such as thinking, I am meditating, I have meditated, I will meditate, and if it arises, that is good. If it does not arise, that is not good. Because resting in that way, within whatever arises, is the immediate condition. Develop certainty in it. So to develop certainty in what is arising in the moment, and putting down this need to classify, to figure things out. And so sometimes these things, the need to figure it out, the need to kind of run back to the philosophy text, the need to say, well, man, like, I don't like teachers, it seems all messed up. Like, they have power over me and stuff like that. All that stuff is fine, but it's usually like there's usually something else going on, when we are trying to kind of opt out of directly experiencing. And so this instruction is basically that Wild Mudra doesn't work if we refuse to practice. And so, Ninth Karmapa goes on to say, as soon as these four conditions for practice are present, all experience and realization will effortlessly arise. Those are the superior preliminaries, and therefore are part of the preliminaries. And so, that is kind of a, it's a note on style, on technique. And so, as Jessica where Jesse points out, the, Tilopa 6 nail, right? Don't try to figure anything out. Right? Just allow things to arise freely and openly, without fear, anxiety, etc. So, now we get to shamatha. And so Mahamudra, very generally speaking, is comprised of the practice of shamatha and the practice of vipassana, but this kind of Vajrayana vipassana called Lakthong, and then the union of both of them together, right? And so we're going to start off with shamatha. So classically, there are two ways with which we approach shamatha. The first are by addressing points of the body, and the next is by addressing points of the mind. And so, points of the body. Now, before I begin with this, it's important to remember that our bodies are all different, right? A good example of this is some of us have long torsos. Some of us have short torsos. Some of us are very flexible. Some of us, have aches and pains. And so, as I move into this, I want people to be able to hear this in a way that is not exclusionary, and that while the points of the body are important, right, they're not a deal breaker. Okay, so I have a very close Dharma brother who has trouble sitting, in cross-legged way where both of his knees are down, and just always has. And he's a much better athlete than I am. He's much more fit than I am. He's probably more patient than I am and more intelligent than I am, right? And but sitting like that just doesn't come naturally to him. And so the he, because of his good qualities, qualities that are better than mine, that doesn't bother him. He's able to settle into his practice very naturally. So the points of the body consist of trying to, and if you can't do it, it's okay, keep your legs in Vajra posture, right? So Vajrasana, or lotus position. So, you can also do half lotus. Some people, don't experience comfort in that and need to sit in a chair, and that's okay as well. The We shouldn't really kind of, freak out about this stuff. Now it says that the hands should be placed in meditation posture, meditation mudra, and held at the level of 4 fingers below the navel. Right? So kind of like we find in Buddha statues. The back should be straight, shoulders extended. They say like the wings of a vulture. So kind of a little bit like, outward. So our chest is open. The neck just slightly bent downward. The tongue touching one's upper palate, or can be allowed to rest naturally. The eyes should be half open and should look straight ahead into space 4 fingers from the tip of the nose. Right? So that's, these are the points of body. Now, again, our bodies are all different, and some things are less comfortable than others. You can also put your hands on your knees. And I was taught actually by my root teacher, whose main practice was Mahamudra, is that sometimes we don't need to focus on the slightly downward gaze, but to gaze forward directly, like with these statues of Padampa Sangye or Guru Rinpoche. Eyes open. No, the thumbs don't. I mean, when I do it, the thumbs connect. But one of my Pating Rinpoche, he's like old school, super super old school. He died in 2007. He was approximately somewhere in his 90s. Yes, Dhyana Mudra, so the meditation mudra. Now, Pating Rinpoche used to say that he thought it was better to sit like this, and that's the way his teachers taught him. And so everything is a little different, right? Hands on the knees, meditation posture, mudra, or Pating Rinpoche's, like that. But the main point is, when we take such a posture, we should relax and not be uncomfortable. We need to be comfortable and at ease. And if one is able to kind of hit all of these points, it's said that one is allowed to gain control of what's called the downward clearing prana. Right? And so this is the prana that kind of, the wind or the energy that controls the lower gates, right? So by settling in this way, that energy, that wind becomes settled. Right? Then the water prana begins to enter into the central channel. And then the fire and the earth prana begin to enter the central channel. The pervasive pranas will be forced into the central channel, and the life-supporting prana will be forced into the central channel. So all of these, so it's said that when the mind settles, right, naturally. That is a good indicator of the fact that the winds are beginning to enter into the central channel, which helps cultivate that experience. Right? And at the same time, posture can help that as well. Right? So one's legs crossed, meditation mudra. Shoulders out, neck slightly down, tongue on the palate of the mouth, or just resting. So if we can, while we sit, to sit with power, stability, to sit like a mountain, to sit like space, to sit like a vajra, and let everything just settle. Then Karmapa goes on to say, not only that, but by taking this posture, reflecting on points of the body, your nadis, right? So the, all of the network of channels, and prana will become workable, and boundless good qualities will arise. Just due to taking the posture of these points of body, experience and realization will blaze of themselves, and you should take this posture as you do this practice. And so he then goes on to say that you should expel some air, some wind, right? And so we went into this, a little bit the other day. So you can visualize inhaling white light, and exhaling obscuration, right? Exhaling confusion, exhaling dualistic clinging, exhaling egotism, exhaling separation. With every inhalation and exhalation, allowing everything to settle. And so these are the points of the body. Now the points of the mind are basically, the way Bokar Rinpoche taught this, and to some extent, we'll see what Karmapa says. He says, do not follow after or ponder the past. Do not think, I will do this, or I should do this, anticipating the future. Do not weigh the present, getting involved in accepting and rejecting. With spontaneous, ordinary mind, do not accept or reject. Do not create any hope or fear. Do not fabricate or alter anything. Rest for as long as awareness remains in that relaxed, natural freshness. Allow yourself to just let go. Let go of any assumptions about the future. Let go of acceptance, rejection right now. Like binaries, just let them dissolve. Let go of hope and fear. Don't fabricate anything. be present. Don't worry about what you're experiencing. So these are the general points of mind. Right? So for anybody who isn't aware of them, I would suggest uh, getting into a little bit Tilopa Six Nails. If that feels comfortable. And then particular points of mind. And so these are kind of more of these specifics. And so, so I don't think we're going to get to all of these today. So I'm just going to, let's see, it's 317. See if I could do the first three. So the first is holding the mind on a visual object. So if your mind isn't, if it's challenging to just rest, right? Which is fine. Let's just put it this way. The force of habit of a wild mind, completely out of check, right, is naturally going to be wild, right? So first of all, don't beat yourself up if that's the experience, right? If everything is just moving, no worries. I'm not judging you. Nobody's judging you. That's okay. And so that's why these, subsidiary points exist. So the first is called holding the mind on a visual object. So if your mind is not able to naturally be still, place a piece of wood or a small pebble or something directly in front of you and hold your mind there. I used to run a Dharma Center for Gyaltsen Rinpoche in Brooklyn, and it was in an old warehouse building, like a cardboard box, like former cardboard box factory where they'd make these boxes. And the floors were cool, but they were all beat up, right? And the like really compassionate thing about that is that there were all these wonderful things to just focus, lightly focus your gaze on. So right now I see some old journal. I'm just lightly placing my gaze. Right? It's kind of like hanging up a coat and just put it there. Allow that to be something that one focuses on lightly. You don't have to get involved in like, oh, how big is that thing? What's in it? I don't remember. I think I brought that with me to India. Blah 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 blah. Like, it's probably not full of anything anyway. Just let it be. Right, so just gently place your awareness on that object. So then another thing you can do is set out an image of the Buddha adorned with the major and minor marks, or imagine one. Right? So an actual Buddha image or a visualized Buddha image. But if the experience of dullness or this kind of sunkenness, this kind of like low feeling, or vagueness, right, kind of like sitting in quicksand, arises, direct your mind one pointedly to his Ushnisha, a little kind of mound right on his head, or the curl of hair between his eyebrows, and rest there. And then if wild or scattered thoughts arise, direct your mind one pointedly to his navel, or to the Dharma chakras on his feet, and to his seat, where he's sitting. And to direct your mind one pointedly to his entire body, or to the top knot of eternity in his heart center, and rest right there. He goes on to say that the individual excellent major marks can be visualized from top to bottom and from bottom to top while you contemplate them. That is the second point. And so this is basically a way of focusing. And the slight application of an antidote. When sluggish, move your visualization, focus on the upper portion of the visualization. When one is feeling agitated and wild, focus downward. Right, so, what's important in these beginning stages of shamatha is, it's typically said that as one begins the practice, we become aware of how fast and agitated our mind tends to be. And that can be incredibly unsettling. And so having a technique to allow ourselves not to force the mind, you're not forcing it, but to gently allow ourselves to anchor the mind on an actual object or a visualized object. That helps things to just settle. We're not trying to willfully suppress. There's a difference. I think that you could say the difference would be like with a snow globe. Forcing everything down. Come on, snow, shuck up the snow globe, and then trying to force all that stuff down. Right? Interestingly enough, the more we're able to be light and patient, everything settles. Right? Can we be light and resilient and patient with what's arising with respect to how agitated our mind can be? And so there's a series of kind of other ways of doing this to direct your mind to a butter lamp about 4 finger widths high, and to just focus on the light. You could use a candle. And direct your mind to the empty space contained in a hole about the size of the palm of your hand, or as large or as small as convenient. That's the 4th point. So if you have a hole in your wall, I don't have one of those, but yeah, you could use a window. There's a window right here. And allow yourself to focus on that space. Or if you want to go punch a hole in the wall, you can do that and use that space. Or you could draw the 3 syllables of the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, a white Om, a red Ah, or a blue Hum. And put them before you and hold your mind on them gently. You can hold your mind on a dot drawn in white, red, blue, whatever is convenient placed before you. And Karmapa points out, that although there are many similar points, they are all included in these ones above. You can hold your mind using any one of these that are comfortable for you. And that will be sufficient. You don't have to go like, I did one, now I need to do the next one, now I need to do the next one. It goes on to say that as a fixed nature, these ways of resting are not established anywhere. So do not hold on to any state of mind. Right? So allow yourself to focus and let mind be, let experience happen. Right? Again, it's not this like, there are forms of meditation where we focus on being focused, staring, focusing, not moving. So that's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to allow everything to settle while lightly holding whatever it is that we're using as an anchor. It's not a big deal. There's no like, oh God, I gotta do this. If the mind is still, let it rest. If it goes, let it go. Do not stop it. Let it wander free. Completely cut all discursive thought, such as thinking, this is meditation. This is not meditation. And hope that the mind will be still and fear mind when it is not. It has a preference. Let go of preference. Cut preference's throat. If the meditation object moves or breaks, so if you're using an object and someone walks and smashes it, or falls over, or whatever, or your eyes can no longer focus, stop looking at it. Look into space at the level of your eyes and let your mind rest naturally and loosely in its own way. So when we find ourselves like a laser, break it up, break it up, break it up, and get free. Not creating a reference point of meditating on this or that. Simply do not wander. Not stained by any dullness or sunkenness. Rest directly in clear insight. Leave the meditation when it is going well. Practice again and again with clarity and joy in frequent, short sessions. It is important to train in a way that does not bring discouragement, taking frequent breaks. So I'm going to pause here. Now, why this point is super important though is because, we get all like, intense. I'm going to sit here for a day and just let it all, I'm going to really show my meditation who's the master. I'm the master of Mahamudra. Be like, right? So let it free. Get loose, move around, When it's good, stop. Don't wait for it to be shitty. Oh, it was great, now it sucks. Okay, I'll stop here. Like the beauty of it is like, there's this, it's as if like, I guess the Pavlovian response is not something that Pavlov owned. Like Karmapa kind of understood the Pavlovian response. So did the Siddhas of old. So, we can basically teach ourselves to hate meditation by repeatedly having shitty experiences and coming back to it, and it's like, oh, my mind sucks, this sucks, I suck, everything is terrible. And after a while, it's not really surprising that one's going to want to stop. Right? So stop, take breaks, and if you can, end on a good note. So there's the practical element in that, that we want to be able to encourage ourselves to pick this up more, right? To be encouraged to practice. Now the other point, a little bit more subtle perhaps, is that our fundamental nature is awakened to begin with, right? And so short session, long session doesn't really matter. We jump right in, jump right in again, jump right in again, So the if our mind is fundamentally awakened, right, and if Buddha nature is actually a true thing, then we don't need to kind of drill down with intensity like all the time, because the purity is always there. Especially if we've engaged in something like Vajrasattva, prostrations, Guru Yoga, mandala offerings. When we truly recognize that the essence of mind is naturally free and open and vast and luminous, just coming back to it lightly is all we need to do. We don't need to, have this weird American, time is money, man. I'm going to really fuck my meditation up. I'm going to get enlightened, and then I'm going to fucking just, rule it all. That's not going to work. Or if it does, you're going to be weird, and the practice is about getting awake, not getting weird, So we will definitely go more into this. Actually, and real briefly, I just want to, while I've got everyone here, as long as everyone is here, confirm whether or not this is going to be going on next Friday. I know it's Christmas, and I really don't remember what, that's how enlightened I am. I have no idea what's going on ever. I can't even find the calendar right here. So, in any event, we're going to pick this up as we do. I know, right? We should do it for Christmas. But I do want to address Kunga's question. Let me just check this. No, it's not happening on the following Friday. So we're going to have actually two breaks. Yes, the Santa Puja. Santa G. I know. Santa Puja. But so, Kunga asked, did the tradition of pith instructions come from wanting to focus more on practice and less on philosophy? Yeah, I mean, this tradition of pith instructions and, direct preference, I guess you could say, for experience, or, the preference around direct perception, is rooted in the fact that philosophy just does not liberate us. It can give us clarity with respect to the conceptual framework and all of that, but that's not the same thing as being able to fully experience and know and rest into the experience of Dharmata, the nature of mind, just innately free. Being able to experience mind as innately free is really the practice of breaking the samsaric response. And so the philosophy can be really cool, and it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. And there are definitely times where it's really beautiful to sit and talk about it, like sit on a boat on the Ganges in Varanasi and wax about philosophy. It feels very timeless and ethereal, and I've done that and it's a nice thing, but it's not the same thing as maybe sitting on that same boat, going down the Ganga, resting in the mind of Saraha, Maitripa, the mind of all the Buddhas, the mind of Uttukpa, the mind of Marpa, the mind of Milarepa. It's a little bit like, and I don't want to draw too much of a distinction, and I also don't want to be like one of these jerky people that just insult people who like philosophy, because that's not the point. But the difference might be being an artist and an art historian, or being a musician and a music theorist, where I was reading an article last night about Louis Armstrong, and how denigrated he is by a lot of jazz folks. And I actually really wasn't that aware of that. And then it makes sense, right? And then it's like, that's cool, man. But he's also from Queens, and that's not that far away from where I live. And he was a great musician, and he was a showman, and so if we can let the ideas drop away, it doesn't mean we never pick up a book on philosophy. It doesn't mean that we don't remain curious. It doesn't mean that we don't try to be better all the time, by learning more and engaging the tradition widely and broadly. But again, sometimes we pick up philosophy when we're feeling a little impotent in our practice. So, reading beer, being drunk, yes, that's actually pretty good. Oh. So anyway, I'm going to pause here, and we will pick it up next year. So for now, it's a real pleasure to be here with all of you. And right now, I dedicate any merit from this very limited kind of activity of mine, quote unquote, teaching Dharma, to the liberation of all beings. May all beings be able to freely recognize their mind as vast space. May everyone present be blessed with the ability to have practice that's free and open and relaxed, powerful. May this year end in joy for all of you. And may we pick up together in a warm way in January. So thank you all. Take good care.